Good evening. My name is Elian Ramos, and I'll be your host today. It seems like I haven't been out here in a while. I've been all over the place, but I'm back now, and I am very excited about tonight's show because my guest tonight is a woman who's out there making history. She's not only the first Puerto Rican, but the first person of Latino descent who has ever occupied the office of New York City Council. That means that after Mayor de Blasio, she is the second most powerful person elected official in all of New York City. She serves District 8, which is, it covers the East Harlem, which is El Barrio, but also the South Bronx. These are primarily Latino districts. And so she's also, beyond New York City, her influence has gotten her to become one of the most recognized figures when it comes to immigration reform and to other social issues. I'm talking about, of course, Melissa Mark-Viverito. Melissa is the Speaker of the New York City Council, and we are thrilled to have her tonight here. Welcome, Madam Speaker. How are you?
Un gran placer. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be with you tonight.
And I'm thrilled to have you. I'm thrilled to have you. I understand that this is your first Google Hangout, so I'm very honored that you decided to do it.
Yeah, as speaker, it's my first Google Hangout. I think actually my first Google Hangout ever, but definitely really excited to be here with you tonight.
Well, thank you so much for the honor. So let's start right away. I want to remind people who are watching to please follow the conversation on Twitter with the hashtags La Jefa, which means the boss, but also girl boss. And of course, Melissa, Mr. Speaker, is a boss in every sense of the word. So let's start with the questions right away. So much has been written about you, but they talk about how you are kind of shy in real life. Sometimes they write about how you keep people at a distance, kind of, or my favorite, which is that you don't have time for pendejos. I love that. But what I feel is like that these different articles, these different profiles that they write about you don't show the real Melissa. Who is the real Melissa Mark-Viverito? Tell us about that.
They're obviously in this position, being an elected official and obviously being speaker, there's definitely the very much public profile, which is the work that we do each and every day. I'm a very committed person, bien comprometida, very committed to the work that I do. I'm at the heart of it all. What really motivates me and moves me and inspires me is believing in equity and justice for everybody, and that we want to make sure that we are creating public policies that speak to that. So my drive is all about that, and that is really who I am, and that also translates into my personal life. I believe in that in all aspects of being respectful. I am private. I try to maintain a level of privacy, but sometimes it's a little hard in this position. But the real me is that I kind of keep true to my essence, despite what position I have, despite being able to professionally advance. I try to really maintain my feet on the ground and keep myself really rooted. And a lot of that comes from interacting with my constituents in my district each and every day.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And from what I understand, you come from a very particular background. So tell me a little bit about your story. What brought you into politics to begin with? And tell me about you growing up.
So, my story is a little non-traditional in many different ways. Both my parents are, my mother's alive, my father isn't, are New Yorkers, both born and raised in New York. They then separately, went back to Puerto Rico. My mom at the age of 15. My father enlisted in the Army after graduating high school here in New York City, traveled a bit, got his medical degree in Spain, and then decided to open up his profession and move to Puerto Rico. And that's where they met. But they're both being New Yorkers, there definitely was always an attraction to New York, and there were roots that were already established here. Growing up in Puerto Rico, I grew up till the age of 18. My mother was a young mother. She was very active in the feminist movement in Puerto Rico. So I grew up in a very activist background, fighting for equality and for rights for women. I was raised by not only her, but all the other women in the feminist movement as well in Puerto Rico. And my father was a doctor who decided to dedicate himself to providing his services to people, whether or not they had the ability to pay. And that kind of social consciousness was something that I developed very early on. And when I came to study in New York, I kind of translated into that sphere of being here, deciding what I wanted to do. When I graduated, I became very active in the Puerto Rican community, Latino community here in New York, and always with that framework, that was established by my parents. And so when I decided to run for office, it wasn't because it was something that I had envisioned for myself. I actually tell people I feel like I was recruited to run because some of the elders in El Barrio, where I was living, reached out to me, saw potential in me, and felt that there was a leadership vacuum in the community and thought that I should think about it, and I did. And so I was, moved into the sphere of running for office based on that level of engagement, of wanting to create greater equity and giving my community a voice. And that's where I am. So that framework that was seeded by, the seeds were planted by my parents, kind of has really germinated into something that is the essence of who I am.
Wow. And we can see, because you can see the authenticity in everything that you do. So what was it like being a young Puerto Rican woman trying to make it in an environment so brutal like politics in New York City? Of all places, New York City is one of the most brutal places for politics. What was it like getting into the politics and gaining ground inside the politics work?
It was not easy then. I mean, I'm talking now in office about 10 years, and it continues to be difficult, right? I tell people that even to this day, there are many times when I am maybe the only woman in the room, right? There's still a lot of work that we need to do to create an inclusive environment in which young women, would want to run, in which we are cultivating and nurturing young Latinas and women of color to consider running. We need to have government in all aspects be truly reflective of the diversity that we live in this city. So it's still difficult, but that's one of the things that, having been raised by strong women, is all about, is that I'm not afraid to lift my voice. And you want to serve as an inspiration to others, to tell them, we should not be silent. We should always speak up. We should make our presence known. We should make our opinions known, our thought process. So, that's something that I'm sure, and that I don't allow myself to be quiet in a situation where I may be one of the few women in the room. That's all the more reason to really stand out. So it continues to be a challenge, and that's what I struggle to do. One of the things, I'll just say this because it's something that I'm really committed to. Unfortunately, in New York City, despite being the city that we are, despite the fact that it's 8.4 million and obviously half of the population is women, our city council, although it's 51 members, we only have 15 women. So we have a very long way to go to bring equality in that setting, to have 50-50 at minimum in this city council be women. So that's something that I'm hoping that we can encourage women to run, and that we'll have a whole crop of candidates running the next time there's an election.
Do you feel that it's different from for women who try to get into politics, and because it seems like the whole system works against you when you're a woman trying to get into politics? Is that how is your experience?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there's some element of that. I mean, we're still fighting for equal pay as women, right? There's still a lot of inroads we need to make to achieve full equality on reproductive rights, even here in New York State. We have some challenges to things that we're trying to get past at the state level. So there's still a lot of work that we need to do, and it's a real shame that we find ourselves in this situation. But that's why I think being able to have this pulpit, so to speak, I can really hopefully inspire others to consider that and see the potential. Whenever we break any sort of barrier, and being the first Latina, the first Puerto Rican, the first member of a minority community to represent and to be in this position, that's a major barrier that's been broken, right? And that inspires others to see the potential that they have, and that really means a lot to me.
And you being able to use that power, that you know, being the first of having that pulpit, like you said, to enact very progressive legislation. You know, like the paid sick days law, the bills on pedestrian safety, some bills on immigration, and because of the way that you've been, you know, your stances, the way the things that you believe in and that you stand for, you've been criticized for being too far left or to being too close to the mayor. You know, haters gonna hate, like they say, right?
Yeah, very true.
What is your guiding light when it comes to enacting policy, you know, and for standing up for things? What is your guiding light in terms of that?
I mean, I think that what I talked about in terms of my moral compass is about equality and justice. There's been so many, and I think that's one of the also important things about representing the district that I represent. I represent El Barrio East Harlem. I represent the South Bronx. Unfortunately, due to systemic challenges we have, right, in our society, I represent the second poorest district in the city of New York. We have the most public housing in my district. You know, that perspective of being a representative of that kind of a district, now being in a decision-making power, is extremely powerful, right? It helps when we think about policies and the changes we want to make. Having that experience of the constituents that I interact with every day, living in the community that I live in, and I think it adds a lot of value because it's a voice that is a lot of times missing in the conversation. And so that's what really moves me is, okay, there's so many people that are living these challenging realities, but we need to figure out how government can work for them, right? When we talk about and the support that we gave to universal pre-K, that was a major initiative of the mayor. And we all were very united because we know that that's going to create equality and allow our children to achieve their maximum potential by creating a solid educational foundation for them. You know, when we talk about raising the minimum wage, when we talk about paid sick leave, that's going to help women and low-income workers more than anything. That's the lens that I look at it. It's like we need to figure out how government can work for everybody. And just because we support those types of initiatives doesn't mean that we don't support our businesses, that we don't support development, that we don't support, you know, the other players in this. But we want to make sure that there's a balance in terms of how policy is created and who it helps. And that's what guides me. And it's really, really important. It speaks strongly to who I am. So, yes, haters are going to hate. There's always going to be those that think you're too extreme one way or another. But I think that people as they've gotten to know me and seen the way that I govern and I lead, know that I'm also a very fair person and that I can listen to all sides and recalibrate a little bit at times.
Mm-hmm. And I, like I mentioned before, you have become a leading voice in immigration because of some of the policies that you have been able to pass in the state. But tell us a little bit about those initiatives that you have passed and how they fit into your vision as a speaker, your vision in the city of New York.
Right. So, I mean, you know, again, when you think about equality, the first thing that comes to mind is like you really want to stand up for vulnerable communities. Low-income New Yorkers are vulnerable, right? They've been disenfranchised. People feel that somehow poor people in this city shouldn't have a voice or have less of a voice than others. When you talk about immigrant communities, you know, that is something that moves me deeply. And I think we have done such a disservice to this nation by not implementing comprehensive immigration reform. We've shortchanged the lives of many, and we are also limiting the economic potential of including specifically our undocumented immigrants into the fold. So it's been a disservice of not getting it done. So what happens is, if it's not happening at the national stage, we, as a city, have to figure out what we can do. New York City is clear that we are an inclusive city. New York City has an executive order that clearly tells everybody that regardless of your immigration status, if you go seek any sort of municipal services, you will never be asked your immigration status. People should not be afraid. And we've implemented under my leadership some really strong legislation that protects undocumented New Yorkers, particularly those who have committed very, very low-level offenses, non-violent low-level offenses that had been being in the process of deportation for very minor infractions. You were ripping families apart. Those families now don't have a provider. Now may need additional services from the city. So we just thought it was unfair. So we enacted legislation that limited the cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement, right? Particularly for those that were being arrested for low-level offenses. So those people will not be deported or will not be put on the path of deportation. Unaccompanied minors, that was something that happened last year, that a lot of these children that were facing and are facing really dire situations in their countries and violent situations were coming over the border. So 3,000 of them ended up here in New York City, in New York, about 1,500 in New York City. We knew that something had to be done. And we were hearing from the legal advocates that these children did not have legal representation when they were going to court. So we raised money. We put in $1 million in New York City, and we raised $1 million from the philanthropic community. So now every single one of those children are going to have legal representation when they go to court. Now that has been looked at, and now other places are looking to, to do it as well. And the last one is, we've done other things as well, but we've also put in money, about $5 million, to provide legal representation to any individual that has a case of deportation in the courts. So we believe that people should have legal representation and get a fair shot. So that's some of the things that we've done, and I've been a very strong voice on this, and I want these actions to inspire maybe other municipalities to think about what they're doing. And the municipal ID program, right, that we have, and the largest in the country, that now is also available to undocumented immigrants. I've actually been invited to Phoenix, to the City Council in Phoenix, to talk about our municipal ID program, because they're having a conversation about creating a municipal ID program, and they want to hear from us. So these are the kinds of things, and I'm very passionate about it. One of my mentors is Congressman Luis Gutierrez, who is a national voice on this issue and very passionate as well. And I'm glad that through my advocacy and leadership and the support of my colleagues, we've been able to serve as an example to other cities as well.
You're making waves out there, and as somebody who's personally involved in the cause, I try to contribute as much as I can. I founded the Border Kids Relief Project.
Really?
Probably heard. So I personally thank you for all of those efforts. Those are things that our community truly needs, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you for being that voice out there. But now that we're in the subject of, not that immigration is a Latino issue exclusively, but now that we're in this subject, one of the things that I admire the most about you is that you don't take things lying down. You tell it like it is, and you stand up when you feel like justice is not being served. How do you think that your role in New York City politics is influencing the political landscape there? Do you think that Latino leadership in the city is shifting? And if so, do you think it's shifting for the better or for the worse?
Well, there's that saying, right? That refrán, that saying in Spanish of no tener pelos en la lengua, right? Like, if you literally translate it, it doesn't sound, sexy or anything, but like, you're not afraid to speak out. And I think that
like it's a bad thing,
No, you shouldn't be. When you're speaking for what's right, you should never be afraid to lift your voice. And I hope that I am inspiring kind of a shift in the way that we look at politics. It's not just about, and this is one of the things I say, yes, we want to elect more Latinos to office, but it also has to be the Latinos with the right framework, right? In terms of why is it that you're doing this? What are the values that you're bringing to the table? What motivates you? So it's not just about being in the position to be in the position and to say, well, we have a Dominican or Ecuadorian or a Puerto Rican, right? No, it's about also the values that that individual is bringing. And so that's really important. We need to believe in ethics. We need to believe in, progressive values, which is not a bad thing, because when you say progressive values, what that means is you're trying to have the tent embrace everybody, right? And not just select a few people. And I think that we should be aspiring to live in a society and in a city that is inclusive. It makes everybody feel welcome, regardless of your immigration status, regardless of your economic reality, regardless of the neighborhood you live in, etc. So I want to challenge that, and I want to hopefully inspire other Latino leaders to think about running for office. But there's other ways to make an impact, not just through elected office, right? You can be an activist, you can head an organization, but we definitely have some work to do, and I hope that I want to continue to be part of that conversation and to shake things up and to move the dial forward and move the agenda forward and challenge people that may actually be holding us back. Because we have to also not be afraid to just speak out openly on issues, but we have to also challenge ourselves as communities. And there are so-called leaders within our own communities that are actually doing more harm than good. And that has to be challenged. And I know that I've been taken to task at times for doing that, but we should be able to criticize ourselves and be able to constructively criticize and figure out how do we move forward.
And speaking of, speaking out and saying things like this, you unlike most politicians, who tend to be either very reserved or very scripted when it comes to, being online and being outspoken in social media. You, on the other hand, have embraced it, especially on Twitter. I love following your account. It's such a mix of beautiful things, but it's a very beautiful window into you. It's a private person, right? So what are the advantages for you as a politician of embracing these platforms, these social media? And do you feel that they have been effective in getting younger people, in your case, in getting younger people to embrace the things that have to do with politics that most young people don't really care about? Do you feel that they're being useful for that in your case?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, look, let's be clear, right? There's so much social media in different forms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or what is it, WeChat, whatever these other. There's a lot, and it speaks to different populations. And what has appealed to me is Twitter. Like, I'm not, and I know some of my colleagues love Facebook. Like, Facebook just never spoke to me, right? I feel more comfortable with Twitter. And for some reason, that's something that my voice can really come out, and I can express myself in a way that I think gives, like you're saying, a little bit more of a window about me. Whether I'm quirky or whether I'm, boring one day, whatever it is, right? You
got us all on April 1st, by the way.
And my staff gets a little nervous because it is me. It's my 100% me, that Twitter account, right? And it's not scripted. I don't tell them exactly. I may warn them sometimes if I'm going to do something that I know will make them a little uncomfortable. But it's me, and so I think it really has been able to expand the conversation with constituents and beyond, right? Because I'm also, you engage in conversations with people in Puerto Rico or nationally. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do here in the City Council is how do we make this council more interactive with our constituents and meet people where they're at. So whether it is through Facebook or creating a website that's more user-friendly so that people can weigh in on issues that matter to them. When we have hearings, we're now incorporating social media aspects into hearings, not just transmitting it live, but allowing people to maybe ask questions through social media as a way of engaging them in the conversation. So we really are exploring using social media to its full advantage because it'll make us more responsible, more accountable to our constituents. And so I'm a firm believer in that, and so I've really have brought on people that are looking and exploring that in its fullest content because it is where we are at, right? We're moving in a society with technology where we have to really be much more accessible, and relying on the traditional ways of communicating is not reaching as many people as we should be reaching. And that's why I've also made a focus of making myself accessible to ethnic media, right? Because it's not, we know that there are sectors of our community that are not getting their information through the Daily News or the New York Times or the New York Post. They're getting it through ethnic media, community newspapers, etc. So we got to figure out ways how do we meet people where they're at. And for me, Twitter was a tool to make myself more accessible to my constituents. And it's been relatively well received, so I'm happy about it.
You're so good at it. I tell you, I love following your shenanigans online. They're fun. They're so fun. So what is your vision for New York City as for your district, but also for the city in a larger sense?
My vision?
Yes.
You know, it's just being a place that continues to shine. I mean, look, we are the greatest city in the world. You know, I can be selfish and say that. All eyes are a lot of times here on New York City in terms of what we do. All the more reason that what we should be promoting and hopefully exporting, right? In the things that we do, we want others to emulate. Is that vision of one city, of inclusivity, of you know, that there aren't boundaries, that we're not segregated. You know, we've been hearing, unfortunately, stories about, you know, that we have a very divided, you know, educational system. Neighborhoods are becoming like more divided. You know, we got to figure out how do we become, you know, this one city idea. And I think that we are on a path in terms of the vision that I hold, and I support the mayor in that greater vision that he has of being a city for all. And I think that some of the policies we're enacting really are arriving at that point. It needs time to play itself out, right? We are now a democratic city in terms of a mayor and the city council. You know, we had Bloomberg for 12 years and Giuliani for 8 before that, right? So we have some work to do to turn some things around, but we're committed to it, and I want to make sure that we are really promoting this city as that. And I think that the municipal ID really gives that idea of this city belongs to everybody, whether or not you're documented or not. You're transgender, you can self-identify on the ID. So that little card is becoming a symbol of what it is that we believe in. And, you know, I want to highly encourage, and that's why I'm more than happy to go to other cities to talk about the value of this ID, because it's promoting that sense of inclusion and that we're all in this together. And, you know, I'm going to continue to work with my colleagues to build that type of a city.
Beautiful, beautiful. And certainly the vision that we need for the whole country, you know, not just for New York City.
Yes.
So let me ask you this, and I know that you have been a little hesitant about sharing this. I know you have some time to go, you know, on your second term where you are, but you have another chance to make history, and with the possible mayoral bid coming up soon in 2021, you are set up to possibly make history again. Or, you know, there's also a congressman who's about to retire in the city, Charles Rangel. What is next for you? What is next for Madam Speaker?
Well, I'll say two things, right? I think all options are on the table, I'll say that. But clearly, I am, you know, someone who I don't believe that, yes, I have 2.5 years to go. I am term limited. So 2017 is my last year. I can't run for this position, right, for city council. And I'm not desperate to think about, okay, well, I have to, from this elected office, I have to figure out if I'm going to get into another elected office. You know, I can, you know, give myself a little bit of a break, be productive and contribute very positively to the city in other ways, and then explore options. So everything is on the table, but I've been very clear that I'm not interested in leaving the speaker position early, which is what I would have to do if I were to run for the congressional seat, the district I live in, which, yes, Congressman Rangel has said he won't run again, so it is an open seat, which is something that is very rare, right? But regardless, you know, I will not leave the speakership early because we are doing such incredible work, and the impact we're having in this city, in which everyone has eyes on it, and, you know, we can serve as such an inspiration. There's so much work yet to do, and I want to continue that trajectory. So that, to me, option is really off the table for me. And when I leave office, if I take a little bit of a break to explore other options, I'm more than happy to do that. To me, it's not the end-all or be-all if I'm not in elected office once I leave this position. I think it's just the beginning. And I'm going to, you know, explore those ideas. So I am always humbled when people, you know, believe that I have the capability of either running for the congressional seat and being a voice at that level, or even potentially running for mayor. You know, when people say, well, you should do this, that gives me a lot of, a lot of inspiration, and it touches me, because that way those people that make that comment believe that what I'm doing is impacting them positively, but also impacting the city positively, and that's a very humbling place to be.
Well, and when and if you decide to overdo it, that we'll be cheering for you, not just because you are a Latina, but because you have been doing such an amazing job in New York, and it's obvious because you have gained so much respect from everyone for being so outspoken and for the job that you're doing. I know that we are running out of time, but I want to give you the chance to have a call to action now at the end, and what would be your call to action to the people who are watching the show right now?
I think the call to action is always, I always believe people should be engaged, right? We live in a world where we need all the help we can get, right? And we need to build the world we want to live in. And in order to build it, we all have to work towards that. We have to contribute in one way or another. So people need to be registered to vote. People need to vote. People need to be involved in their local communities. They should be involved in social causes. You should know who your elected officials are. You should engage with your elected officials. We need to be engaged and concerned about what is happening in our communities. We can't leave it or expect others to do the work for us. And that's one of the things as an elected official that sometimes can be frustrating, that people somehow think we have a magic wand and that we can solve all the problems. And, we have limitations, as everybody does, but we can't do it alone. I cannot represent my district on my own. I need the help of my constituents to stand there with me when I go to battle for them on issues that matter. They need to be, they need to be willing to make the phone call if I need them to make a phone call, to go to Albany if we need to go to Albany. People need to be engaged. So anybody that's listening, whatever is comfortable for you, they should be engaged and know what the issues are and figure out ways that you can help us build the world that we want to live in. And that's my call to action.
Beautiful, beautiful way to end the show. And speaking of, being engaged, I'm going to urge all of you to please follow Speaker Melissa Mark-Viverito. She is, a very open person in social media and everywhere else online. You can see on the screen all of her contact information on Twitter, on Facebook, and also on the website, council.nyc.gov is the website. She's on Twitter at mmviverito and elsewhere. So I would urge you to please stay in contact with her, talk to her, ask her, whatever questions you need to ask her, and stay engaged. Like she said, it's very important that we all stay engaged in our communities for this.
I also do Instagram, so I like Instagram too. So follow me on Twitter and Instagram.
Just everywhere. Just follow her and please, ask her any questions and support the things that she stands behind as well. I want to thank you so much, Speaker Mark-Viverito, for being here, for making the time to answer our questions. And I would love to have you once again whenever you want. You know that this is your platform, and you can come and speak about the kind of issues that you are supporting at that time. And I want to thank everyone who is watching for taking the time to watch this. Please continue to support this amazing woman. And thank you, Speaker Viverito, for being here.
Gracias, un placer, and definitely more than welcome to come back in the future.
Beautiful. Thank you. Have a great night, and I see you next week, everyone.